starting the call, and the call has started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our bi-weekly community call. This is, I think we just discussed the 7th one so far. Today, we're joined by one of our top community members, Marcos, and Adrian from Cryptium Labs that will talk about what they're doing on the validation side. But first, as always, we're gonna go through some questions that have come in so far through the Google form, and also look at some active challenges right now. Let's get started with that directly. I'm going to do a screen share quickly and look at two big challenges that are ending tomorrow. Wait, here, share. I hope that works. So the first one is the Decrypt Capital HQ, which has been challenged, which runs out tomorrow, as I said. I urge people to vote in both this and the Bushwick generator. What's also interesting is that, yeah, the Bushwick generator is the second challenge, which also has a large amount in it. It's also one of the challenges which has the most votes I've seen so far, with 93,000 FOAM tokens in the vote.
Yeah. This is a really interesting challenge as well, because the FOAM protocol as a TCR is live on Ethereum. The contracts are open source. It's a decentralized protocol, but the FOAM Space team kind of works as an interface facilitator in that we run this kind of client to interact with the FOAM TCR. Anyone else could build their own interface, but in ours, we use tools from Mapbox to help assist people in filling out the data and navigating around the map. And this is a case where Mapbox is actually putting two addresses in the address field, two New Yorks, because for them, they see the city as Brooklyn, New York, and then they see the state as New York. So the challenge reason is that there are two New Yorks. And of course, cartographers can manually edit this out, but it really brings up a question of, when we rely on outside data, how it can, corrupt potentially that. But on the other hand, it is not necessarily wrong in that this is how Mapbox, which is a very successful geoencoding company, has chosen to encode kind of locations like this. And it's not only in Brooklyn, it's in places like Bologna, Italy. You'll see two Bolognas. That's like the kind of city and the state. So that's why it shows up twice. But yeah, I encourage people to vote either side, depending on how they feel. But those are kind of the highest active challenges that we've seen so far, and there's a lot more happening as well.
Yeah, I also recommend people checking out the Discord threads for some more background for what Ryan was discussing. It's very easy to find on discourse.foam.space. They're heavily discussed and therefore often at the top of the discussion board. Next, we want to go through the questions that have come in so far. One second. So just some general questions before we jump into Marcos. Here, first one is, what's something surprising you've observed while building FOAM? Can be related to community, tech, team, industry, etc. You want to answer that, Ryan?
Sure. So I guess something that's surprising is to see how engaged people are in describing the mechanics and debating them. But I think another surprise is just how difficult these things are to really discern. And so we see a lot of kind of feedback and a lot of seeds being kind of planted for what a 2.0 smart contracts could look like. But it's all still pretty murky and opaque. And I think that kind of speaks to the point that we lack a certain set of tools to either simulate or model or kind of do token engineering in a way. So we have a lot of kind of energy being tossed around of kind of emotions of how to potentially improve the map. But I think it is surprising to see how collectively it's a challenge to even, articulate really solid specifications or really solid kind of flows of value to actually see what that system would look like. And so it's kind of a dark cloud that we're all looking into. But it's also been surprising to see how many people have added unique points that you wouldn't find on other kinds of maps, and just the different variety of ways people have started to engage with it has been really exciting to see.
Another question that came in is regarding FOAM and exchanges. What is being done there?
Well, as a company, we can't really make any forward-looking speculative statements about exchange listings, but we definitely understand it's important to get the tokens more available and attract more people to the project. So it is something we're working on. I can't comment directly, but one thing we can say is to kind of reduce onboarding and user friction, we're integrating the 0x trading widget into the map. We had some delays with that due to smart contracts that the 0x team had to add some additions to their library for. But this will allow active trading on the Radar Relay exchange and have a way that new cartographers who join the map can obtain tokens without leaving that map very quickly. So that's a tool we're excited to roll out within the next month, and definitely will play into our larger kind of efforts of making the token more accessible to people. I see a follow-up question is, what can be done to be doing more onboarding? So this kind of way to get tokens really easily is the first step. The next thing that we're doing for the month ahead is revamping our website so that we have a dedicated path to attract people from a marketing flow into a landing page and have them really understand the concepts in a simpler way. Because our website was a bit geared towards just the token sale, not user acquisition. And we will continue to do these kind of games and campaigns, as well as optimizing the mobile wallet. And we have hackathons coming up during Blockchain Week here in New York, where we'll be launching our kind of FOAM developer bounty programs or grant programs, and hopefully build more and more tools to have either applications start to appear or easier ways to kind of start voting or curating on that.
Great, thank you. I think there's one more, which is a recurring question we get often, which is about how to buy hardware. I can answer that. It's still not possible. We're doing the best in our abilities to move as fast as possible. And we're currently working with LoRa as the radio standard for testing out our radio agnostic protocol. But we don't recommend people buying it if they don't want to test out at home. That's of course great, but yeah, there's going to be an announcement when people can start purchasing and participating in the network.
Yep, we have exciting stuff coming this quarter of our kind of local test nets of the firmware we've been developing and our software stack, which will be made available. And we're working towards kind of a FOAM developer board reference standard that can then be distributed to people. So by the end of Q2 or Q3, our goal is to have these developer boards available for purchase, with also directions of how to potentially build your own. The idea is that anyone can participate in these networks similar to Bitcoin or Ethereum. So we know that that's a top priority for community members and something we're really excited to get to the next step for. But I think with that, we're going to get on with the agenda, and please welcome Marcos, who's one of our top cartographers and challengers to the map. So thanks for joining us, Marcos. And I know, Arthur, you guys have kind of prepped the conversation, so I'll hand it off to you to get started.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Marcos. Nice to have you on the call.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be here. To be honest, it's kind of a privilege to jump from the community into the call. It's exciting.
Well, yeah, you've been doing a lot of work, and I think our conversation was really great. And maybe that's also where we can kind of pick up, and maybe picking up even from the start, what you call the gold rush, which is the proof of use period, and maybe also shortly before that, the launch of the FOAM map.
Yeah, so I'm informed since the very beginning. I already participated in the token sale, and I get to the project through Caleb, that is very well known on the community. We worked together the last 5 to 7 years, and he told me about the project, and I jump in. And the proof of use concept is something that it was the first time I was seeing something like that, right? I don't remember or saw any other project where you actually had to do something with the tokens other than just take it out and hold it or sell it up to you, right? So it was kind of a unique thing for FOAM that even made me more interested into the project, and discussing with Caleb how to best use it, when to use it, how to do it. And I started to find out through the daily digest that basically people was just doing it because they have to do it. So it was kind of a really encouraging thing to penalize these people, right? It's people that is just rushing to put the points of interest, just complete the proof of use, be able to get rid of the tokens, or go to the tokens to exchanges and sell them. So it was really, really, really exciting to challenge and punish all these people. So I was taking the daily digest from Caleb every day at night, and going through it 5 to 10 minutes, looking at the top points at that stage, and just looking if they were right or not, or what we could do with them, and if they were doing a good job or not. And that was really, my job for my kind of entertainment at night after work, for a few weeks, close to a couple of months. It was just penalize all these guys that were doing bad for the map, basically. And it was quite rewarding, right? Because I made quite a lot of foam tokens. The problem is now it's not that easy to challenge. And when we talk about it, right, we were discussing, and there is a lot of discussions about the type of challenges that are coming into the map now. That is, a typo on one sentence, it's being challenged, and it's like, I will never challenge something like that. Everybody can make a mistake, and okay, just inform about a correct this mistake, but challenge a point of 16K phone tokens for a typo in a sentence sounds like too much. And that's kind of the story, right? For me, it was the gold rush. And if you look on the leaderboards, I didn't have activity on the last months due to work and the time that it requires now. That is, it's much more than on the early days on the gold rush, right? So with the work and the project, the personal projects and the family, it's been quite difficult to keep up the pace with the guys that are now taking the first positions. It was quite a funny, right? That I got invited to the call because I was the top on the leaderboard, and a few days before, just someone takes the first spot, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Maybe we caused that even by announcing. Someone got really hungry for the first spot, seeing that the privilege that creates by being invited to our call. Of course, now we have to invite them, maybe.
Yeah. You
Um,
deserve it.
yeah. So also maybe something that is interesting that we talked about on our call was how like different features that were rolled out over time improved or like helped you with the process. So yeah, as a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, so one of the best features I saw deploy on the map was the filters, right? It's really easy for voting, for example, right now, to just take a look at all the challenges that are active by selecting the filter on the filter of challenges, and you just zoom out the map, and you get a list of all the challenges that are available that you can review very quickly. And the other feature that I use is not in the map, right? But the daily digest from Caleb was my main source of information. I mean, that summary, it's really really great, and you get everything in one page, right? That is, in one email you get all the information without even have to look for it. You have someone that is looking that information for you, so it's kind of making things much easier for everyone. And I spoke with Caleb about some improvements that could be made when I was using it. Because, for example, for me, it was complicated. The complicated part was go to the email, you click, you go to the map, then from the map you go to Google, you try to search for that point of interest to see if everything is correct, and all these clicks, probably can be reduced in some ways by allowing to have everything on the same place, or to do something with it, to avoid that many clicks from the final user that is using that daily digest. So it's but 100% the best feature that I saw on the map for me was the filters.
Great to hear. I also think that this will be very appreciated by the developer team to hear how the kind of feature rollouts that they've been working on are appreciated by people that spend as much time as you in the environments that they create. I also think, so we touched on the subject of map improvements, or this kind of like, it almost seems like we're in a shift now where you had the gold rush and then there was less action. And now again, there's a lot of discussion around the map, surrounding new challenges and kind of the, let's say, the costs associated with challenging, which are things that we've also thought about in terms of governance, and maybe is worth looking at for the future. As the TCR model, certain, let's say, mechanics in the TCR model become more and more apparent, and how they manifest in challenges. And it would be interesting to have, if you have any views on that, and what you think might be improvements.
I mean, the other big improvement, right, is the gamification you have been doing on the map. It's great because it adds value to the people, and it adds excitement, right? To see your name on a leaderboard, to be able to win some exclusive items, NFTs. It's something that you cannot do anywhere else, right? So it really encourages people to go to the map and do things. Compared to the beginning, that it was only kind of the monetary value that the FOAM tokens had. Now there is much more around it, and that all those features, I really think that they have improved a lot the, let's say, the player experience, right? The customer experience, in terms of get something from the time that they devote to the map. It's really cool to see, and all these competitions to guess the building first, and all these promotions you have been doing. I really think it's amazing, and it adds a lot of value to the user experience.
That's really great to hear. And what we're kind of moving towards is, a full-fledged badge and achievement system, but also more games. Like an idea we've been discussing with some colleagues is like a quest, in that if you need a certain number of badges to unlock the next reward. So for example, you have the badge for adding 100 points, you get a different badge for voting on 10 things, you have a different badge for adding 10 art galleries. And with that combination of badges unlocks like a different one or something. So there's a lot of kind of different layers of gamification we're excited to explore. But it'd be also be great to hear your opinion on kind of the intrinsic protocol and kind of the intrinsic incentives without the external kind of rewards, and the discussion we've been seeing around, okay, if these challengers are winning petty points and then they're removed, how do we make sure someone puts them back on? Or just about implicit incentives for not only challenging, but adding these points and building the registry, if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, just everything you do on the map gets a reward of you are creating something, right? And it's your baby because you created it, and you get attached to it. I was looking at my challenges every day, right? And I was looking at my points every day to see if someone was challenging them. That by itself, it's already a reward, even if it does not have a value or something attached to it, right? It's you have your thing in somewhere public, and and you get credit for it. Or if you don't get challenged at the end, you are getting credit for your points, because they are right, and people will use it in the future. So that's it's by itself a reward. And then there is the rewards through FOAM tokens that, of course, are really important, right? It was my main the thing that was moving me to challenge points. It was first the reward I get by being successful on my challenges and doing the right thing, but then it's also the FOAM tokens I was getting that had had a lot of value. If you look on an average salary of Europe, of course, it was very small value. But probably if you look on average salary of other countries, other regions, it will be a huge salary just to dedicate some time to the map. So that value is something that probably is not promoted enough. From your side, the amount of value you can get on the map if you do the right things, right?
What about people doing the wrong thing who try to then, gain,
Yeah. Yeah,
full
I,
time, start challenging things for no reason,
yeah.
or overwhelming the community, things like that.
I spoke with Arthur about that, right, as well, right? I come from the gambling industry, and one of the most important departments in the gambling companies is the fraud department, right? That tries to investigate and prevent collusion and fraud. And I see kind of a lot of similarities between the FOAM map and the TCRs and gambling, because there is a lot of room for collusion and for fraud, right? It's I just challenge, and my friend votes on all the challenges, or I make a group of friends and we get some nice bag of tokens that allow us to challenge and win every single of the challenges we make. And at the end, right, of my discussion with Arthur, it's true that we have a huge fraud department here that is the whole community trying to vote for the right thing. So if that happens, it should kind of solve itself through the community. But it's a huge risk, in my opinion, for the map. It's probably the biggest risk that the map has right now is the collusion part. And we see, for example, I was reading a couple of days ago the ogre situation, right, with the prediction that said something similar at the end on the voting system they have, and there is a lot of threads going around about possible collusion on different markets, right? It's something that at some point could happen to FOAM, and I think you should really take that into account, because it will be very frustrating for the community if that starts to happen.
Yeah, definitely would agree. And yeah, as mentioned on kind of discourse, that we've kind of deliberately launched one of the first token curated registries with kind of the most basic primitives of how they would work, and are getting a lot of learnings of how they really do operate in the real world. Now that we have, at least to date, over 8,000 points that have been added, some have been challenged and removed. So that makes this one of the largest token curated registries, and there's been a lot that we've learned so far that are definitely going to inform the next version of smart contracts and logics and parameters. So yeah, it'd be great. I think we'll be organizing kind of a more workshop-oriented call open to anyone in our community to begin kind of ironing out those specifications. And yeah, I think that kind of wraps up this section, but I would just like, as a closing, maybe hear about some other features we've launched if they were useful to you. For example, like the voting keys being stored in browser so that you didn't have to necessarily remember them, or like the email notifications, or those features you're using or helping your experience?
Yeah, I mean the start with the keys was a nightmare, right? I had my I have my Google Docs always there with all the keys and all the addresses for the points, and I had to keep the registry every day. So it was kind of a pain to go through it and just copy here, paste here. Then in a few days, I have to go to my doc and I have to copy back to the map. So it was kind of really painful to go through that process. And I agree that, and I didn't recall that, but I agree that it was a massive improvement on the life of of a challenger or a voter. It was really, 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 really good.
Awesome. Well, great to hear your perspective, and we'll definitely open up to questions at the end of the call if anyone has any for Marcos. But thank you so much for joining and sharing your perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Marcos.
Thank you, guys.
So as a next step in the call, we're joined by Adrian from Cryptium Labs. We did a small intro before. But Cryptium Labs works out of Zug, works as a validator and more, involved in several projects. And maybe that's a good like segment into understanding what that more also is.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Adrian. I'm one of the co-founders of Cryptium Labs. I can sort of start a little bit by a backstory. As a backstory to how Cryptium Labs actually got started and why currently it's sort of seen as this mainly a validation company. So originally I started on the Tendermint team working on Cosmos for about 18 months as a core dev and head of community. And during that time, in sort of December 2017, we ended up having a software version that was stable enough in order to run decentralized testnet. So I got on a Zoom call with like 3 other people that I'd never met before. Interesting fact there is like one of the guys gave me my first office space for like 4 months in Copenhagen after I'd met him on that call for free. It was great. Thank you, Martin. And yeah, so we ended up setting up all these testnets. And so over time it became apparent that running validators would be something that is quite interesting because sort of as a developer, you have in this situation where you understand what the code base does, and most of what proof of stake is really about is about running secure code bases. It's not as much about, like in proof of work, it's a lot about buying hardware, acquiring capital. This is much less the case in proof of stake. And so as core devs, there was sort of a cool opportunity to do. So we set up a company, me, Chris, and Arwa, and sort of launched this out of Zug. The fun thing is, so we're operating out of like a high security Swiss data center that we share with the banks here, which is one of the reasons why we picked Switzerland. It's like, what is the one country everyone believes to be fairly safe and neutral all the time? Well, Switzerland. Besides that, we also don't sit on like any geographical fault lines. So like, I don't have to worry about what happens if an earthquake hits our data center. So we did that, but at the time, this was sort of in summer 18, and Cosmos was getting delayed and delayed. And it's like Tezos was live, and Chris had worked with Tezos before. It's like, cool, let's talk to the Tezos team, let's see what they're up to. So we actually ended up getting pretty close. The Tezos team launched a Baker. They called Baker's validators, proof of stake validators on Tezos. And I think right now we've actually become the largest public validator on Tezos. And so just as a point of reference, we've never taken any VC money. We have no capital backing. This is literally just like proof of stake at work. It's sort of like people that hold these tokens delegate them to us, and we didn't come in sort of with a massive pre-sale discount to just own the network. But so over time, this evolved, and now we're also running live on Iris, Cosmos, we'll do Polkadot. I think generally speaking, we'll validate any reasonable proof of stake network. So currently we're also setting up testnets on Edgeware and NewCipher. And I think it's also something interesting for us to look into if FOAM ever moves in this direction. But yeah, you hinted at the fact that sort of it's validation more. So validation is a cool thing, but we decided that we didn't want to run networks or protocols that we didn't understand. So that sort of resulted in the fact that we understood these networks and protocols very well by now. So we've transitioned a lot into protocol development, because besides secure validation, it's like another huge need in the communities in general to get more qualified developers to look at the stuff. And like I think from like Cryptium Labs, the people there, it's sort of a very unique experience in this field because we worked sort of with very novel consensus mechanisms and proof of stake technologies over the last 2 years, and we're extending this work now. Yeah, so that's sort of the second area that we're doing. And then the third area that oh, by the way, sorry, a practical example for this is that we're currently writing one of the first outside protocol upgrades for Tezos. So Tezos on-chain governance, sort of automatic binding on-chain governance, where you can upload code to the chain, and then if the chain approves that code, everyone automatically upgrades to that version of the code. So we're currently working on that, which will be interesting. So it goes live in the next 6 months, I think, 3 to 6 months. But the third thing that we do with Cryptium Labs is the other large need, right? Like now that we have proof of stake working and protocol engineering working, a ton of people need to understand how these protocols work, what the upgrades mean, sort of like give objective analyses over what a protocol upgrade actually entails, whether this is sort of in the long-term best interest of the network. And so this is sort of the third area, governance, community building, where we effectively look at what's happening on the network side, on the development side, and really break it down in an objective, tell people about this is where we're currently at, this is what this is proposing, we think this is a good idea for X, Y, Z. And just because as a validator, you sit at this unique intersection where you have the capabilities from the engineering side, these changes. You also have a direct touch with the community through your delegations. And it sort of seems like an obvious fit. It seems like an obvious fit for us to take that knowledge and teach everyone else about how these networks work. That is sort of quick intro into what Cryptium Labs does. I don't know. Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, a few about that and some more follow-ups. But just on the kind of the second aspect that you guys do of actual protocol development and protocol upgrades, and you said, you know, your company doesn't have outside investment. Is that something that these protocols are directly compensating or giving you grants for? Or is it something you guys are taking your own initiatives to improve the protocol to ultimately improve your, you know, staking margins?
So this sort of depends a little bit on the protocol. From Tezos Foundation, so for Tezos, we actually received a grant from Tezos Foundation to work on this. To be fair, though, we didn't receive it sort of upfront. Like, we did a lot of work to begin with, and then received a grant after it became obvious that this is like something feasible. But what I'm actually most excited about in something like Tezos is that developers can attach invoices to the protocol upgrades. So you can say, like, if you vote on this piece of code, then it will sort of mint, let's say, 1,000 tokens to this specific address. And I think this will be huge for most of these decentralized protocols, because it, for the first time, it gives, right, like, governance systems are effectively independent entities. So they have the ability to print money in order to fund development on top of them. And I think we haven't seen this enough yet, where these protocols pay for the development itself, where you're sort of not relying on this trusted third party to hopefully keep funding developments for these networks, which is something really exciting. The other aspect of this is that you can build these, which is really cool. You can sort of do an ICO over protocol development effectively. So you can sort of pre-issue tokens that are redeemable against a future invoice for your protocol upgrade. So instead of saying, like, I don't currently have the cash to hire 5 developers, but I have this cool idea, you write a proposal, and then you can sort of like give these tokens to the community in order for them to bet on whether this protocol upgrade gets eventually approved or not. And once it gets approved, they automatically get paid for it.
Cool. So you're kind of pioneering different kind of compensation models for protocol upgrades and maintenance.
Yeah.
Really exciting. And so it seems like you guys are working across a number of different protocols that you mentioned. Have you noticed any sort of common theme of difficulties in setting up and scaling validators, or any kind of best practices that you've come to develop that maybe are unique to your setup?
So I think one of the biggest things, and actually I do sort of take partial blame for it because I initially ended up coining the term, is the sentry node architecture, right? The idea that you have a validation node that has a private key attached to it, and then you have a bunch of nodes in front of it that protect it sort of from DOS or simply direct malicious access, that you have sort of a layer 1 defense. And it seems that a lot of validators picked this up and thought, oh, this is like a traditional web service. Let's have these auto-scaling automatic failover systems where it's like, yeah, if I get hit by DOS, I spin up 100,000 sentry nodes. And even if I don't get by DOS, I have 50,000 sentry nodes in front of me. And then if my one server crashes, it automatically spins up a second validator. And I think that's really solving the wrong problem. Like, the way most proof of stake systems are designed is that slashing, so providing a wrong signature, is much, much more expensive than like being offline for, let's say, a day. So like in Tezos, the stupid example would be like, we can be offline for a day and it may cost like $1,000, but we may be offline, we provide like one double signature and this costs around $30,000. And even though sort of the economics work this way, I think a lot of people have the idea that you want to have these automatic failover systems. So And historically speaking, they've been extremely risky. So all cases of double slashing Tezos have happened due to automatic failover. Like an exchange ran an architecture where effectively they had a shell script that watched whether the first node went down and stopped signing, and then automatically spun up the second node. That script just failed, and now they had 2 nodes signing for 2 days at the same time. It's a shit show. But so something that's very unique to our setup, I think, is that we try to move as much of the block validation as we can into secure hardware, so that we, for example, run on the non-ledger, and there's an application that verifies what it is signing before it provides a signature, which means that we can enforce some of the, actually all of the slashing conditions so far in hardware, saying that like even if all our servers get compromised, it's not a problem. It can take us offline, but it can never cause us to get slashed.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point of view. Yeah, so maybe I want to kind of shift the conversation into like the future of FOAM, and as we're going to be utilizing proof of stake, and we're kind of really agnostic to which ultimate parent blockchains this will run on. So it'd be great to kind of hear your take, but I'll just give a bit more context in that FOAM proof of location, it relies on multiple flavors of BFT consensus. We kind of have 3 types of synchronous, partially synchronous, and asynchronous. And so in our cases, it's kind of, we have local consensus in zones of physical areas of coverage. So you have at least 4 nodes, which are radios, which we call zone anchors, and they can establish a zone. And so they're going to be running this synchronous BFT time sync protocol over radio and just synchronizing their clocks and maintaining a quorum on kind of time and space in that zone. And then we use this partially synchronous consensus in that they keep a log and share a state machine, printing all their timestamps. And for that, we're using Tendermint consensus. And then the idea is that to ever even establish this zone, you first would need to stake tokens on a root chain into a service level agreement contract. So you're saying, hey, I'm going to open a zone. It's going to be for 6 months in New York City, and I'm putting up enough collateral, and I'm promising to follow the conditions. And then with us, we're using right now a Plasma architecture to connect the root chain to the Tendermint zone chain. Right now, building off of the 4th state Plasma MVP, which uses that. And so the idea is that you have this kind of finality on the root chain that's asynchronous, and then we're using these different systems locally. And at some point, there might be an actual verifier that's reading those logs and checking for fraud. So seeing if all the timestamps are consistent, are there any things that break the laws of physics? If one zone has the receipts of customers, do the zones next to it have them in their logs as well? Because presumably everyone should have heard them. So we have all these kind of systems. And our time sync protocol is radio agnostic, so that we could run it on an LTE radio, but you need a government license to do that. So we're very open, and right now targeting these low power open radios called LoRa. In the future could be a different radio. But the same goes for the parent blockchain. For us, theoretically, that could be Ethereum 1.0, 2.0, could be a Cosmos zone, could be Dfinity, could be a parachain. But it will be staking, and then there will be inflationary rewards on that parent chain for operating the protocol correctly. So we have a lot of similarities with how proof of stake systems work today, but where it's different is that we have this kind of local consensus, global chain, and there's a physicality. It's part of the actual protocol running over the radio. So FOAM is kind of unique in this way, but we are taking a lot of existing methods and systems and trying to piece them together. So it'd be great to kind of hear just your point of view on that kind of work, or if you have even opinions on which parent chains might be optimal for FOAM, in that so much about the different ones. I know that they overlap a lot and are also competing with each other.
It's sort of interesting. It has become very difficult to answer sort of pick X, like pick sort of X over Y. Mostly because I think fundamentally speaking, none of these systems are currently that useful, right? Like Ethereum 1.0 isn't scalable, Ethereum 2.0 magic, Cosmos doesn't have transfers, doesn't have IBC, Polkadot sort of sits somewhere out there in the future, Tezos is still extremely hard to use, Dfinity is still effectively just magic, no one knows what that is right now, and like there are a bunch of others, right? So my personal view on this is that I think sort of over a 5-year horizon, a lot of the technologies will end up converging. And sort of because given that all the software is open source, there's no reason why other chains wouldn't start adopting features that were developed by other blockchain ecosystems as fast as possible. Due to that, my personal thesis is fundamentally that you should bet on whatever governance system you believe to be winning, right? Like you effectively right now, you're not betting on technology, you're betting on the governance system to be able to incentivize a group of people to move the ecosystem forward faster than everyone else. And by the way, this also doesn't imply that I assume that only there will be one winner. Some people will specialize into different niches, and depending on your use case, this sort of matters. Like, for example, I think Tezos will end up specializing a lot into like highly secure smart contracts that are formally verified. Ethereum may go more for this global thing, Polkadot for shared security. Cosmos may try to do something on token transfers. But fundamentally, my view is that you want to pick the chain, like to pick a root chain, you want to pick a system which you think can sort of evolve the fastest going forward. Because like even Ethereum as a root chain right now is not ideal because there are all these not theoretical attacks, but there are all these attacks that can sort of exhaust your capacity to exit. So I think you want to bet on governance systems for the root chain. I think for sort of the way that you use tenement consensus, I think tenement consensus is a fantastic consensus mechanism, fantastic partially synchronous consensus mechanism, especially if you want safety. And I think most protocols will actually end up preferring safety over liveness in the long run. You may want to have some, like an ultra secure but liveness favoring chain running under the hood that everyone can sort of use as a fallback in case your own liveness threshold gets breached, right? Like in tenement, you have like more than 1/3 goes offline. But I think most applications actually want to have safety over liveness.
Yeah, that's why we were attracted to it, in that there's, with a low number of zone anchor nodes, quick finality. So it's like optimal for IoT. And then if you do have 1/3 going offline, you probably don't want the system out in the real world broadcasting radio messages to malicious actors. So it's great that it kind of shuts down. And then, yeah, in our cases, there's the exit function to leave your zone. But yeah, it's interesting in that we can't really necessarily pick the root chain right now, given that none are production ready in the level that we would require. So, but you're saying governance of those chains would be the most important consideration. How do you see like the governance of protocols? Like FOAM will have its own token, its own set of parameters. It already does. You'll have continued ones. How does that kind of overlap or conflate with the kind of governance of this layer one, or whatever you want to call them, these scalable multi-chain chains? How does the kind of governance of those that you rely on overlap with the governance of your protocol? And is it that the people voting in FOAM, should they also be seeking to become a stakeholder in the parent blockchain? And where does the governance overlap with the kind of teams and protocols?
So that's an interesting question. I don't necessarily think that let's say you want to use the FOAM token holders decide to use Tezos as their root chain. I don't necessarily see that they have to become also they don't have to start acquiring stake in order to have a voice in governance. I think over time the FOAM governance will want to work closely with the sort of Tezos dev team or the root chain dev team. But it doesn't mean that the FOAM governance token actually has to be able to control the underlying root chain. Because I think the FOAM governance token is much more designed around sort of how do we build this location-aware protocol, right? It's not like the FOAM governance token is interested in building the most scalable root chain. It is interesting in using a root chain, but it's like, I don't think the FOAM governance should be involved in figuring out how to get to a scalable root chain. At some point you want to focus on your little area where you know what you're doing and sort of be able to give some of the control to a semi-trusted, or not even semi-trusted, but like to someone that you think will make reasonable choices, to a governance system that you think will make reasonable choices. Sort of like Switzerland, right? Like the reason why we established Cryptium Labs here is because I personally believe that like I don't have to have a stake in the Swiss governance system, but I think I can sort of like shape the direction of how blockchains get regulated here enough that the Swiss governance system makes reasonable choices for me, so that I can focus on my little area, which is Cryptium Labs.
Yeah, makes sense, I guess. I mean, this is all theoretical, but in kind of the discussions, what it comes down to is, you know, there could be a scenario where, for example, in something like a parachain where there's state rent and somehow the rent is now too expensive to renew, or somehow you're voted out and now you have people who can govern the rules of FOAM, but now FOAM loses its underlying security. Of course, it's an edge case, but I'm just wondering in general for the future, how much these people should participate in those governance systems. I think you answered it well, just as a follow-up.
I think like you want to make sure that you have you want to make sure that you have representation, but I don't think you have to go as far as say that anything that isn't fully governed by the FOAM token is not usable by us. But yeah, this is like one concern I also have about Polkadot. It's like, how will this play out in the real world? Like once FOAM is a successful parachain, we're going to 10x your state rent. It's like, maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Well, in our case, this is pretty hypothetical, but given that the FOAM protocol is radio agnostic and different countries already have different regulations around how you can use radios. So it's like more restrictive in Europe than it is in US. In some Eastern European countries, it's like radically restricted. So it may be the case that in certain countries, you're actually running different hardware, but running the same protocol. And maybe you're also using different root chains if it can all, you know, be tracked effectively. So you have some more enterprise driven in Europe and they have to follow different rules for how often they can broadcast, and therefore they're servicing specifically enterprise clients and they use a parachain for that. And then you have like in Australia, there's zero laws, let's say, and they want to use Ethereum because they can, you know, launch 10 times more nodes because they're not like breaching any radio laws or something. So
right. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
It's hard to imagine how all the things will work.
I can tell you a funny anecdote of how I ended up actually personally looking into radio a lot. So with Tezos currently is running a Nakamoto consensus, which means that it's sort of like it's like very susceptible, the same way that Bitcoin and Ethereum is susceptible to network splits and network level attacks. So we started playing around with this idea of setting up a secure broadcasting facility in Switzerland that every so often, like every minute, pings the most recent block hash over both radio and satellite into the atmosphere. So that if you're sort of a Tezos node in China, you can tell if you're being eclipsed. Like if the Chinese firewall goes up and they feed you crappy data, you can tell because you get the radio wave broadcast of what the latest real block hash should be. So I'm fascinated with radio waves in general.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. Nick Szabo's pursuing some work about Bitcoin transactions over long radio. Yeah. And I think that, you know, longer term proof of location could play an important role in kind of proof of stake systems. And if a protocol wanted to enforce that validators had to be geographically distributed.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I know recently Filecoin added to their roadmap proof of location because their protocol will tell you if data is on different devices, but it doesn't tell you if those devices are all in the same warehouse, which could burn down. So we see that proof of location can inform other proof of stake protocols that want to hook into it and require validators to follow a certain geographic distribution. And more to the earlier part of the call, to ways to enforce, you know, the map. Proof of location can also be that, hey, if you want to vote on this challenge in Austria, you should show that you were in this country for within the last year or something. And so we really see that proof of location being this kind of fundamental piece of infrastructure that does one single thing, just proves location, offers secure time, and hopefully can kind of inform ways that other protocols can use that kind of tool.
You know, the cool thing is actually you could use proof of location to sort of bootstrap identity, because you sort of map out where do you spend the majority of your time. So where should we consider you to be a resident?
Yeah, definitely. You could do also like geofenced voting, but also I haven't seen this discussed much, geofenced stablecoins, because traditionally fiat currency is to keep prices stable within a defined area, like the United States. And so that's another interesting avenue. But yeah.
Cool.
Cool. I think we're moving towards the end of the call, so I'm going to open up to questions if anyone following along has any others. I saw one come in, which was, will zone anchors broadcast a level of accuracy for their positioning data? So it's a good question. They, not necessarily that they say, hey, I'm offering service at a 5-meter accuracy, or they're not going to broadcast, hey, I'm offering service at a 20-meter accuracy. But by the nature of them broadcasting, if you can receive at least 4 signals, you yourself can determine how accurate it is. And FOAM is not meant to replace GPS necessarily. It's to open up a new market value of actually generating proofs. So you'll be able to, know where you are. If you're in Manhattan, you know you're in Manhattan. You can find out which part of the island you're on by checking GPS. And then if you check your location on FOAM, you can cross-reference its accuracy. And if you're happy with the results, you can then talk back to it for a fee to generate this kind of proof. So you have the availability to open the app and triangulate yourself. And if it appears accurate, that's how you can know it's accurate. I don't see any other questions that came in via the YouTube, so I'll just pause for one moment to see if any more want to come. But otherwise, this has been a really fulfilling discussion. Really happy to have you both, Adrian and Marcos. If Marcos, Arthur, Daryl, you guys have anything you would like to add? I guess not.
I guess it's a no.
No, just very thankful. I also thought it was a great conversation, and thank both for joining.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for following along. We'll be posting this video shortly for those of you who missed it, and look forward to the conversation continuing on our discourse.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye,
guys. Thank you.